what I'm going to do here is I'm going to import this track. This won't be an issue. If you did actually copy this into the session file itself or in the session folder, it should be very easy to locate. So hopefully it belonged to the one last call audio. You drag it into this particular session here. Away we go. All we're going to do is apply new track. So the beauty of this, the way that I had William export this, was he consolidated it first. Because he did that, he did it from the beginning of the timeline, which means now if I select new track session start, I don't have to go back and realign the positioning for this. What I'll end up being able to do is just hit OK. This track essentially will come in. Oh, although, shoot, you did, I saw you consolidate it, but this isn't the consolidated version of the track. Here, go back to your file. Well, then I'll tell you where the beat map is for this, because this will be an interesting fix. All right. Actually, so William, I think we plucked out of the audio file folder. We didn't pluck the consolidated version of the file. Yeah, but you know what? Sit tight. Just watch. Oh, crap. It's missing a bunch of stuff. There's only like 3 claps on this. Let me see something real quick. That'll be a problem. Go hit undo for me. Hit stop on your play because your playback's like rolling. Hit undo. Command Z. You just use Command Z. And do it until I say stop. So keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yep, one more. All right, so that whole thing's one clip now, right? Double click on that clip. Yeah, it's one clip, right? All right, hit cancel. Just consolidate it again for me. Shift Option 3. Yep, Shift Option 3. It didn't do anything. It didn't look like. Did you get them at the same time? Shift Option 3. There it goes. Go back to your Finder. Command Tab. Should have runtime. Sorry, I don't know why this would have hit Command N. All right, let's see. Where's that? Oh yeah, I think you took clap track over.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
That's
right. 04, that was 11. Okay, I took the wrong one.
all right, sorry guys, I got the fix coming in. We're gonna have to, we're gonna have to get rid of this clap track and bring the right one in. Here comes a good one. All right, this one says clap track 04. It's under audio 240 on the alias. So clap track 04. Pull that one because this one will sync like right away once you bring it in.
Because that one was consolidated.
Yeah, it's on the alias. Is that what you asked, Isabel?
No, I'm saying on a new track.
Yeah, you'll just apply this to a new track. No. Well, stay in your. Are you in that project session?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in that project session. All you have to do is you're going to re-import. Go back to the audio alias and re-import the correct audio file. The one that says clap track 4. Clap track 1 was like a short version of it, and the clap track 4 is the sync version. See the importance of having this locked is that when you bring in clap track 4, you're fine because you were the one that generated it. So what you see on screen is just fine. Everybody else just needs to import clap track 4, and if you import it from the beginning, what it's going to do is it's going to map from the beginning, and you'll see it locks in position where in relation to where he actually recorded it, which is why I had him consolidate it before he handed it off. That way, you're not wondering, oh, did the artist that was trying to send me this file, did they mean to have this at chorus 1? Or there's no question about sync start positioning consolidation format. So did everybody get it imported in so far? Got it, Savannah? You have it in? What's that, Taquandre? Did you have it? Did you import it in?
It's the 04 one.
Oh, so you imported it, but you didn't see where it went. Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay. So that's the old one. So delete that one. You need to drag and drop or pull the Where did you slide down? Oh no, that's probably it. Go to the top. Well,
No, yeah,
that's not it either.
I try to put it,
How did you do it?
um,
Okay, maybe it jumped to the clip list. Maybe we need to follow according to this instead. So do it again. Just do it again and see what it says. Because if you go to import, it'll say once you choose again. Oh yeah, so at the one at the top.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then when you do it again, it'll say.
Oh, I don't think I added it.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and then yep. So yours is synced. So yours is ready to go. So same thing for you. You're just gonna do import again, right? Oh yeah, okay. Drag that to the top so it's near the drums. So make sure that clip's at the top near the drums because this is what you're mapping it to. Now, obviously, William did a real quick clap, but it should show us and it should provide enough information for us to do this correctly. So, step one to make this easy. Do you guys remember what it was? Kind of make this easy. First thing we did to the clip on Monday. What did we do to it? Yeah, we basically we cut it. Yeah, we did a cut up to it so that it started on a beat and it ended on a beat, but it didn't have all this extra space. So because if we were to look at, so this is kind of a catch, okay? So this is the advanced element of Beat Detective. Beat Detective works great if you set it up with some flexible space to make errors, let's just say. Because the problem with it is if we go and use Beat Detective, one of the things it likes to do is it likes to basically say, you know what, the beat should fall on the bar, but if we go cut this up at the first clap that happens, it's going to assume that first clap should be mapped to the beginning of the bar. But if I were to go in and edit it, so like if I look at this where it starts, if I were to go in and edit it and I don't give it any buffer, it's immediately going to try to sync all this stuff to land on a specific bar. But if you can see kind of how these are mapped out, some of them are ahead, some of them are behind. They're pretty much just kind of here and there. And the problem with it will be is if I sync it here or if I sync it here, this is, so notice this is the nearest bar beat before. This is beat 4 of bar 190. So because Beat Detective has a crappy time understanding when it starts in the middle of the bar, what we want to do is make sure we separate the clip at the nearest beat 1 marker. Okay? So go to, on here it's 190, bar 190 beat 1. In your grid, make sure you're in grid, not in slip, because it'll screw it up if you're in slip. All right, and all you're going to do is use a separate command. Command E, we did this on Monday. Command E, all we're going to do is separate it. Let's go ahead and then just highlight the rest of the track. And, well, actually, as I say before that, the very end still also needs to end at bar 1. I don't know if William did that at all. So if you go to the very end of the track, you'll notice the very end of the track ends on a beat 2. We need to go ahead and delete that extra bar. So see how there's an extra bar here at the end?
Yeah.
To make it easy for Beat Detective, we need to make sure that this clip ends on beat 1 of 231. So all I'm going to do is delete that, make it nice and simple. All right, so the beginning of the section starts on a beat 1, the end of the section ends on a beat 1. Right? Nice and easy. Cool, right? Did you get that?
Yeah.
All right, so once we're done with that, all we have to do is double click it. Well, okay, I'll say this. The main thing that we did on Monday is it was all of our drums were close, so we didn't have to slide them. My suggestion before you just jump in and start beat detecting is let's find out what this thing's actually doing. I would open it up, so I could do it for you so you guys can see it. I'm going to go listen to it and see where he dropped these claps, because depending on where he was trying to clap in might also determine what we want to do with Beat Detective, because it might falsely determine that it's supposed to belong on the quarter note when he was trying to make it fall on an eighth. All right, so this will be a fun experiment. All right, so here's what we're going to need to do. Easy way to make this work is let's go ahead and select it from that bar, from bar to bar. Let's go to Event, Beat Detective. So make sure Beat Detective's up. All right, everybody got Beat Detective up? Okay, so step one, we're going to skip the first two operations here because they're not needed in what we're going to do. We're going to start on the left side with clip separation.
So highlight it first.
Yeah, highlight it first. Make sure it's lit up because otherwise it's not going to be accounting for what's needed. Now, one thing you might have noticed when you, those of you who were here Monday, when you highlight that, it probably came up with trigger markers already. You see them in the pink?
Yes.
If it came up with trigger markers already, please go to Collection and hit Clear All. It's in the detection side on the right. That little drop down, hit Collection and hit Clear All. We need all those triggers out. So it saved all the ones we did on Monday, all the drum ones we did on Monday.
Okay.
At this point, you may still see pink because it's going to analyze now just a single item. Yep. Once you're done with collection, go to collection, you hit clear all, it'll clear all your cues that are added in there. Go back to normal. It's still going to show some stuff, but it's based upon what it's analyzing now. Make sure you hit capture. So this is the next step for those of you who weren't here Monday. You're going to go to selection. It's the middle of the screen there. Hit capture selection. All this is going to do is it's going to map out that it's supposed to start on this bar and end on this bar so it knows what it's going to sync to. Here's the catch though. His claps, more than likely, you're going to want his claps to land on the quarter note. So where it says contains eighth note, let's transition that to quarter note before you hit capture selection, and then go ahead and hit capture selection. So where it says contains, we'll go to quarter note. Let's go ahead and hit capture selection. Now right now, mine is like detecting a bunch of stuff that it shouldn't. So we're going to have to work with that. We're going to have to modify that. On the detection side, so everybody capture selection so far with quarter note value?
Yes.
Anybody behind? All right, on the right-hand side, go ahead and hit Analyze, where it says Enhanced Resolution. Go ahead and hit Analyze. What it should do now, if you did that correctly, is, well, except I think William, you might have already adjusted your sensitivity. If you hadn't adjusted your sensitivity, it should pretty much show every quarter note beat, or every clap that exists in here should have a pink marker, trigger marker. You guys have trigger markers on those claps so far? If you do or do not, if you did already analyze it and you had the selection captured, the sensitivity bar right here, the sensitivity slider, is what you're going to do to adjust for more or less sensitivity to make sure you have every one. The reason I chose claps is because they're infallible, meaning there's no way to screw up finding a trigger for a clap, because the difference between the noise floor and him clapping is realistically going to be about 90 dB, which means the sensitivity, if you take it all the way up, it doesn't pick up anything else other than claps because there's no extra noise going on. Right? Does that make sense? You kind of see it's only hitting the claps. Scroll your sensitivity all the way up real quick for me, William, because yours for some reason is still off. Did you capture selection?
Yep.
Capture selection.
After the 1/4 note.
Yep, quarter note. Did you?
Analyze.
Yeah, in enhanced resolution. Is the enhanced resolution tab on?
Yes.
Yeah, and is it set to subbeats?
No.
Oh.
Put on bars, beats, or
I had
keep it
them
on
bars.
beat.
Yeah. So that's why. Okay. Yeah. So by default, it should have queued as a subbeat, but if it didn't, it should be on subbeats. Notice if you do it on the bar, it's going to skip. That's what yours was doing. That's why you only have
some of the clap.
yeah, it's going to skip all of those. Trigger pad, again, is going to stay at 2 milliseconds because we need that front end buffer. At this point in time, what you can do is you can go ahead and hit the separate command. Right? So we're going to separate each of these claps. Here's the beautiful part about this. Anybody use loops?
Yeah.
All right, for those of you who use loops, if you don't, I love loops. I like using loops. What I don't like about loops is if I go to a fill or transition and I want to remap the beat pattern, and my loop is just one stereo file, and everything, the kick and the snare and the hats are all together, I have to manually go through and cut them up using like tab to transient. If you were to do this instead, notice at the separate command after that, all those clips are separated. So now all my claps are already in individual clip files. So if I wanted to reorganize the clap pattern, like if I didn't like how it clapped, I could literally manually map out each clap to hit on a grid line.
Cool.
without having to do this whole process, which means if I'm using a beat and I was like, you know what, I want to double tap the snare on this next phrase, I could just separate it this way and just go drop it into the bar that, in order to modify the beat without having to go back and redo the whole loop. Because a lot of times the reason it's a loop coming in as a stereo file is because it was built in some other DAW, Fruity Loops, Reason, Live, any one of those things it could have been utilizing. So that's a big deal. Anyway, these are separated. So let's go to clip conform on the left-hand side. We're going to go ahead and do our conforming to clip. Make sure it still says quarter note. What you'll see here is when you do actually hit conform, I'll zoom it in a little bit, you should see it move. Now, from what I could hear of what William clapped, it wasn't really like tightly to the bar, to the song. So if you go ahead and hit conform on the bottom right, what you should see it do is it should move quite a bit. What does yours say? There's a warning up. What does it say?
Says this observation will move clips to a new location, the destination.
Yeah, go ahead and hit continue.
Confirm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shifted quite a bit. Now here's the catch. At this point in time, his claps just got moved to the nearest quarter note. All right. What you'll see is if we push play before we edit smooth, if we push play, we'll probably hear that some of them are consistent and some of them land in different locations, because I think in all, he really wasn't doing like a... So they're kind of falling in odd places. I know you probably noticed that, right? They kind of look like they're mapped to quarter note, but they're not right on. Easy way to fix that is let's go ahead and highlight the first one.
See, mine didn't separate like that.
It didn't separate. Okay, did it separate at all?
No, I missed it.
All right, let's go back real quick. Hold on, sit tight. Let me find you. All right, when you were at clip separation on the clip separation tab, it showed your triggers, right?
Yeah, it showed it when I was there.
All right, did you hit separate at the bottom right?
Separate.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Now you can hit clip conform. When you go to clip conform, it'll shift it to its nearest location. At this point in time, once your clip is conformed, all you guys have to do is go to edit smoothing on the left, and you're just going to hit smooth, and it'll do the fill and crossfade for you. By this time, after you do that smoothing, you should be able to zoom out and just see that it's all back to being one file, except there are some spots. In this instance, you can see, I think it went too far out of range. There's like a gap right here.
Like that would be clip fill gaps or no?
Yeah, fill and crossfade. Well, it's gonna
Well,
first
not-
where it says fill gaps. That's the same thing as fill and crossfade, except without the crossfade part. So what it's doing when it fills and crossfades, we talked about it Monday. All it's going to do is it's going to trim the clip itself left or right so that it heals the gap. The reason that there's a hole, though, you guys might have had a couple of spots where there's literally a clip missing or like there's nothing in there. Once it finds it, it tries to peel the trim back far enough where it hits another clap. It won't put it back in, because if it did, it would accidentally put it out of time. So it just cuts it off and does a fade out, and then it fades it back in at the next clip spot. So essentially, it tries to keep it from being accidentally overlapping any of the previously recorded material that's underneath.
Now highlight all the clips and hit smooth. You said just the first.
Yeah, you should stay highlighted on all until you finish this operation. So, just triple click. Oh, you're in the grabber. That's why. Make sure you're in the selector tool to get that. There you go, bud. Yeah, but you got to make sure that you don't. Are you in grid? Oh, you are in grid. Okay, yeah. As long as that same selection exists, then you hit.
So after edit smoothing, we get smooth.
Yep, yeah. You just hit smooth. After hit edit smoothing, you just hit smooth. You can make it a longer crossfade if you wanted to, but this.
The selection must not contain crossfade.
Did you already build any crossfades?
I don't think so.
Did you already accidentally hit edit smoothing once?
Yeah, I did.
That's why. Because yeah, so essentially you can't redo it unless you hit Command Z, which is fairly simple. The beautiful part about this, though, that I absolutely love is this means that technically I've had artists come in and go, oh, we want to do this on top of the rhythm, and they absolutely just are horrible at their timing. It's not a huge problem if we can remap it with Beat Detective. We can just move on. I think I had a kids choir come in one time, and oh my gosh, like that's one of your worst editing jobs ever because they're kids and they're just screaming, and when they try to clap together, it's a cluster. But what I did with them, because they couldn't figure out where the beat was supposed to go very easily, is I just took a pair of loudspeakers, put it in the room with them, blasted it of the song, and then they just clap. And all I did was go back and find the claps that work. Yeah, I just map them to the grid using Beat Detective. And if I have one 4-bar phrase, I just copy pasted that. Just literally just duplicate that or loop it throughout the session so it's easy to work with. In most cases, that's what you're going to do anyway. But I mean, like if we had a tambourine, this would be very, very, very easily seen or drawn out in terms of how easy it is to get off time with a tambourine, even when you're good at playing stuff. But again, back to what the mapping is supposed to do. All this is the goal is to have it map out to the grid itself. Did you guys get through this?
Yes.
All right. Did everybody finish this part?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I want to talk about just for a few minutes, and then we need to get into talking about the elastic audio elements. Let's go ahead and zoom in. You can save where you're at because we're going to come back to screwing around with this. Let's go ahead and look at the kicks on the track that says kick.04, and zoom in for me. And we're in your Waveform Zoom. Please zoom in on your Waveform Zoom. So your Waveform Zoom is up here at the top, this little guy right here. Let's bump that up at least once on that Waveform Zoom so we can see a little better what's going on. I do want to talk about waveform identification and understanding what the waveform does and understanding how the waveform works. Yeah, so William, up on screen real quick, bud. Make sure you use the waveform zoom here. Zoom in just enough so you can see a little more of the waveform itself. The reason I bring this up, we talked about rules for editing on Monday. One of the things that we didn't talk about is understanding when and why you might edit for time and how you're best going to make your approach for editing for time. We talked about on Monday the difference between loop drums and live drums in terms of the waveform. Let's look at the kick, though, and let's talk about exactly what you see. In kick 04, go to bar 190, beat 1, please, and zoom in so we can all see this. Bar 190. Bar 190, beat 1. I'm on like 184, but at least if you're on 190, beat 1, you can see what we're doing. And zoom in overall so you can see. Not that far, William, because that's a little too blown out. They go, oh no, go back up. You need to see it, but see how it's like looks like it's clipping above. Yeah, that's probably a good spot. Zoom in the edit window. That way you can see what's going on. And you can use a zoom focus toggle if you want.
B191.
Yep. Yeah, B190 bar 1, and on this kick track. No, you have to make the selection to do it though. Select. So you're gonna go to 190. Yeah, 190, beat 1. So you stay with your selector tool, your grabber tool is running out. Highlight and hit the zoom focus. You're gonna use zoom focus for the zoom toggle. No, you click it. There you go. Well, of course. There. Just do this. Undo it.
Mine's not even on the same wavelength.
Well, I'll be right there.
Well, I don't know if I'm on.
So that kick right there. You can zoom in and actually use this little guy. Zoom in over for me. The one above it. The one above it. The little arrow on the right. See that arrow? You don't even need to click that. This part. Yeah, unclick the zoom toggle. This guy, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Blow it back up to the median. Oh, is yours not showing? Or is it just not at the right?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. That's the kick that goes right before 190. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's what I'm bringing up. This is the important part. Now, it looks like it clips, but it actually doesn't. It's just the fact that this zoom is zoomed in on the waveform, which will make it expand this way. Here's the big part about this. When it comes to waveform analysis, one very important thing to know is that a waveform does not come to full fruition, meaning the waveform doesn't come to a full perceptible way that we can receive it orally, right? Without a full cycle. What does a full cycle look like? 360 degrees, right? We know it as peak and trough, positive and negative. Which means if we're to analyze where the strength of this kick falls, where would it be? Yeah, essentially. Why? Because we haven't, if we like notice our time alignment stuff here, if all of our time alignment just falls at the very, very front end, that's the beginning of the sound itself. Strength of the sound does not get realistically doesn't come to fruition until the full cycle. Which is why she mentioned the third one, because in reality it's right here. What's really important about that is when you're making your edit choices for time alignment, what you're not going to do is you're not going to do the following. You're not going to jump in and go, oh, you know what? I can use my tab to transient. I'll tab to this transient. I'll separate it, and then I'm just going to slide it so that it falls on the grid. Does that make sense? This wouldn't work. This would actually be very delayed. That's what's really interesting about it is the grid gives you good visuals, but your ability to analyze the visuals themselves is going to be key in making sure that your timing mechanisms, when you're going through and mapping timing out, if you're going to do it through listening to what the timing sounds like, close your eyes and do it. But if you're going to do it visually, because a lot of times I'll do it visually because it's fast. I mean, I don't even have to listen to the audio if I know what's in there. Just, I can just have it on a little bit and just cycle through everything and make sure it's nicely aligned. But it's important to note, though, that this is the start of the note, but it's not the strength of the note, which is why you're not going to move it to the grid just like this. If you look down below, this is the time alignment. We did the time alignment. I did Beat Detective with you guys alongside of you guys on Monday. Time alignment version looks like this. Why? Because the strength is crossing the grid there, not the front end. It's a little different. That's also why, though, in a lot of instances, when you drop, if you were to do live, great example, live drums with loops underneath, you're going to have to adjust the loops so that they fit with where the live drums really fall. Because if a lot of times the loops come in just like this. The loops come in at the start of the grid, and they start. Instead of having the strength of each note fall on the grid, which means a lot of times when you bring a loop in, you have to nudge it left so that the strength falls on the grid so it maps anything else live, which is why a lot of times people usually do this. If they're going to start with drum loops, if they're going to use drum loops, they start tracking to the loops, and then they bring in a live drummer. Why? Because a lot of times it's easier than having to go back and sync them in the post, because the drummer's going to have a lot of fluctuation. A lot of times they lay into the beat on phrases, and then they end up on the backbeat for phrases. And if you were to side-by-side that after the fact with a loop, you'd all of a sudden start to hear discrepancies between the two, timing-wise. So a lot of times, most people will start with, all right, you know what, we know we're going to put loops in this, but we also are going to have live drums. We're going to start with the loops and have them be there, have the drummer play to the loops, understanding that their snares are supposed to lock, their kicks are supposed to lock. But even when you do that, you can't let your loops start at grid, bar one, beat one, without any what we call, in this instance, when we're using Beat Detective, trigger pad. That's really what we're looking at. There's a little bit of fluctuation at the front end that allows it to start before it hits the grid. So one of the things you're looking at when you're looking at these transients, transient is defined by transient I mean, it's a type of waveform. What is it? What type of waveform? Transient's a reference to It's a type of waveform.
Frequency.
What is it? It's a characteristic of a waveform. Transient means.
That's a hit.
Say it again.
Cycle?
Okay, kinda. Say it again.
Where the beat hits.
Kinda.
What is your question?
What is a transient?
It's the, yeah, it's a frequency. What's the waveform frequency?
All right, but it's a characteristic of the waveform frequency. What is it? Anybody know?
Sound?
Well, yeah, it is.
Amplitude.
All right, so transient. This is very important for you to know because when we look at these, we talk transients, and they're very easy to detect. A transient is a waveform that comes and goes rapidly. All right, meaning the ADSR. You guys remember ADSR? What is it?
Audio sound.
Yeah, attack, initial decay, sustain, release. All that ADSR is a reference to the waveform. If we were to look at this kick, here's the A, right? The D along with the R happen right here at the end. There is no sustain. And you kind of can tell, but not as much here. But as soon as you do this, in real reference to time, as soon as you bring it back, you can see it. All we have is attack, pretty much attack and release. The decay could be considered a part of the release itself, but there obviously is no sustain. This is essentially, these are transients versus standard waveforms that look like this. This is a non-transient. See this waveform down here? So essentially this does not fall into the category of a transient. Why? Because,
No check.
well, essentially it doesn't come in and go quickly, right? Well, what's the point? What's the importance of it? From a timing mechanism, transients for you guys are super easy from a waveform identification for you guys to look at and go, it falls on the beat or it doesn't, right? Because it's simple. It usually means transients usually have a quick attack, right? They don't ramp up, and they usually have the strength. Isabel mentioned it. The strength of that one, you could see very clearly the third part of the waveform is where the strength of that went. Soon as we get strings involved, okay? Strings are on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and pull out these one of these string parts so you can see it. And I think we only briefly talked about this, but I'm going to go to one of the swell sections. I think this one is. Let me find the spot. Oh, there it is. We'll do it right here. There's a big crossfade here because there was a bit of an instance with the transition, so you can see it down below. But if we were to go look at these, I'm just going to delete one of these crossfades and solo out this violin so you could see it. At the beginning of this clip right here, the reason that this was edited the way that it was is because if you follow the real location of where this should go, notice this is the starting note right here, bar 1, and it should land on bar 1. So let me zoom in a little tighter so you can see it. This particular string instrument, bar 1 is here. The start of the note is here. But because of how long the attack takes, the attack takes a long time for a string instrument in most cases. Attack takes a long time, you have a sustain, the initial decay kind of happens right here, but then it sustains really quickly. It transitions into the sustain, a lot of times it holds for a long time. But the difference in timing is you can't look at that and go, oh yeah, that's on, or oh yeah, that's off, as easily as you can with the transients. So what you have to do a lot of times is you still have to go in and listen with your ears and let your eyes kind of guide you. Let me get rid of the drums actually real quick. actually, here, start over here. You kind of hear how slow that is in the overall? Well, one of the things you're looking for when you're working with this is you're asking yourself, okay, well, if I can see that the waveforms take a while to swell, how do I know where the beginning of the beats are supposed to fall? In this instance, using beat detective alignment is very complicated for slow instruments like this. You're not typically you're not going to be able to use beat detective for an instrument like this. When is beat detective great? Drums, rhythms, rhythmic things. A lot of people forget that rhythmic items could be vocals. Even strings, if they were rhythmic, if they were going, right, they were doing that, awesome. You could do it with beat detective. If the vocal was going, hey, hey, easy to do with beat detective. As soon as the vocal's going, you know, then it's hard to know when they're going, hey, you, making those changes, because from a waveform standpoint, there's not a huge difference in the wave. This is how we essentially get to elastic audio. This is why we get to elastic audio as a time alignment feature, because the things that beat detective can't do, unfortunately, is they can't do sustained notes very well. The other thing they can't do is they can't differentiate the difference between a note that's supposed to have one pitch and a note that's supposed to have 10 pitches at the same time, simultaneously. Beat detective looks at the analysis of the waveform itself, and it's looking for transient attack, looking for transient release, and essentially making timing decisions based upon that. When we move to elastic audio, there are a couple major benefits. One of them is that not only is it detecting when an amplitude starts, it's actually analyzing which frequencies are involved. So, and that's where it really gets its strength and why we may use it. But understanding what the waveforms are doing is going to help you to know, hey, immediately when you look at it, did it edit it correctly? Did it map it out correctly? Did it accidentally do it incorrectly? The other thing we have to keep in mind is, from a waveform standpoint, we talked about when we do crossfades, when the best time to do a crossfade is, or the best time to do a punch in, punch out. We talked a little bit about that from an editing standpoint. The zero crossings. The downside that we have problems with when we also do time alignment for sustained instruments is, look at this string. I have the viola, so I have viola on screen. Where do you see a zero crossing on here? Or I shouldn't say a zero crossing. I should say, where do you actually see it fade out to the zero flat line inside of this? Because if this was a kick or snare in the same phrase, the transient provides one major element, and it's all these gaps. See all these gaps where we drop to nothing? We go to the strings, and all of a sudden we realize, dude, these guys don't take a break, particularly because of how they're performed. So understanding how to analyze the waveform and work with the waveform itself, knowing okay, I can see right here, these are pitches. These are individual itemized pitches that are taking place right here. Here's the beginning of a series of notes. A lot of times these particular items, these peaks, are representative of a transition point inside of the phrase. So if we were to do the opposite with this, I had you guys blow up the waveform. So let me shrink it down and show you now what we see. If I were to bring this back down, what happens is, kind of in the blown out feature, almost as if you were to imagine any point that pops up is a major change typically in pitch, and is a major change in volume based upon a note transition for a very elongated waveform. So when you're going to make your decisions about who falls on the grid, a lot of times you got to come through and look at, okay, where are these notes starting? So here you can see this note, transition to note. Is this late? Can you see it? Yeah, it is. So you guys see why?
Well, there's an extra little.
Yeah, little dips. It comes off a little late. It starts a little late. What it should be doing is it should be doing this. Ending early, starting early, because it's slow. It's got a slow attack. In the ADSR, it's slow. Yeah, because it's doing a bow operation. This is an appropriate timing. This is an appropriate timing. This one must be a rhythm that doesn't fall on the grid, I would imagine, because of where it does fall. It seems like it falls dead center. of the grid. So this one must be, I think we're at quarter note grid, so this must be an eighth note in the midst of the phrase. But I can immediately tell that this was late. Right? So it's going to be important for you guys to be able to visually identify these, because when you're doing these edits, if I were to say, all right, guys, I need you to time align, all 24 string tracks, you could go through each one and do their timing, or you could also, to make it much simpler, you could go through and visually reference first who is and who isn't at a time, who's got the most solid amount of timing on the overall. And you can literally line these up. Let's see if I can back up to that phrase that I was just talking about that was late. So here's the late phrase. You see it? Let's follow this down. I'm going to put it on the grid so you can see the grid line. I'm going to follow this down and show you and expand every other string instrument that falls below it, because I want you to see then what that means for everybody else's timing. And this is kind of an interesting problem that happens. This is layered tracking, like essentially overdubbing. Layered tracking. Problem is when you stack tracks, the first track you stack is the most essential from a timing standpoint. Sometimes I'll have people go in, and what they'll do, because they know this, is instead of performing it correctly, they'll perform it in time. It's two different things. You guys ever seen, great example. How many of you know how to play the piano? Do you remember learning to play the piano? When you hit the wrong note, what'd you do? Yeah, a lot of times you learn inappropriately, because it's a big no-no, but most people do it as a tendency. Oh crap, I hit the wrong note. Let me hit the right note, and then I'll move on. Or let me start over from the beginning of the phrase, and then I'll move on. Problem with it is that in transitioning from a musical standpoint, a lot of times people that when they hit the wrong note, right, or I should say when they're focusing on hitting the right note, what do they do with timing? They make sure they hit the right note, even if it means a sacrifice in time. So what a lot of people do is when they're like professionals, when they're going to do some stacked tracks, if they know, hey, I'm doing something that I'm not sure if I can hit all these notes in this right range, vocally, on guitar, even drummers, what they'll do is they'll lay, if they're going to do stacks, they'll lay the first line of the stack so the timing is right, even if the notes are wrong. The reason why is because the next stack that they do, they'll approach you with, all right, I'm going to try to hit the right notes and the right timing, and I'm going to know if I'm in or not based upon the timing that was laid out in the first track. A lot of the mistakes that people make when they layer and they're not doing any sacrificing of either one way or the other is they start to just dump the layer on, and layer 1 sloppy, and layer 2 sloppy, and layer 3 sloppy, and usually they're not the same sloppiness, because if they were sloppy together, they would actually be accurate. Kind of interesting conundrum, right? If they were all sloppy at the same spots all the time, they'd be accurate as a group. But most of the time, it's note 1 was off, and it was ahead. Note 2 was behind. Note 3 was ahead. And then the next time they do it, it's not the same way. It's, note 1 was a little behind, and note 2 was ahead. So it's very important to accurately lay out these kinds of features, right? So making sure the first guide track that you use is pretty spot on. Well, obviously, you can see how difficult it is in this scenario. Why? Because these are very elongated passages. So if we were to follow this down, I'm just going to slide it down. You can tell me what you see. If you follow this grid down, I see a couple things. The performance in the green is on time. The performance in the yellow is kind of close. Performance in the blue is behind. The performance in the pink is behind. The performance in the blue that falls below that, I think the question would be, is this the right note or is this the right note in the edit?
The middle.
Well, it's hard. It would be hard to tell. This one you'd have to go and listen to, because it could have been. I've seen this happen a lot where this was the right note, but they didn't hit it for the duration they were supposed to. They didn't hit it. This was like an accident on the way to the wrong note, or this could actually be an accident on the way to the right note. So this might be the wrong note on the downbeat. Talking about harmonics like we did on Monday, we talked about 3 key elements. So make sure you grab notes from Monday. You guys that weren't here Monday, 3 key elements we talked about for really good professional sounding recordings. What were they? Quandre, you had it, didn't you? I had the three T's. Yeah, timing, tuning, and tone. First step, be in time as a group, not just an individual. And I think that's most of the young bands that I work with, if they're like, in their early 20s, this is what they're all like. They're all like that. They're all very, I'm in a bubble and I'm worried about what I'm doing, but the other 4 members or 3 members I could care less about. I'm listening to them, but I'm not so involved with what they're doing that I can sacrifice any of what I'm doing over here. Problem with it is timing, the timing mechanisms, being in time with yourself does nothing for being in time with everybody else. And I think that's one major key here when you're doing the layers. This particular performance, this is what I actually did with the string players. I brought in a violinist and a violist, and I brought them in and I said, look, here are the parts. I had all the parts scored out. This is what I want to have you play, and the harmonies that I want to have you play. And because of time, I really want you to do like a ton of stuff in a super short amount of time. So this is how we're going to do it. You're going to play the phrase. I'm going to put it in a loop. When the phrase ends, you hold your note. You'll hear it kick back around again. You move on to the next line, and I'm going to call out cues. So I'd be talking to them and talk back going, all right, do the same thing again. Do the same thing again. Do the same thing again. This time go to the harmony line, line 2. Then they'll play the harmonies. All right, go to the harmony line, line 3. Then add the harmony. Go to the alternative line. I had some alternative lines. I was like, I don't know if I want these. I don't know if I like these. We're going to put them in anyway. And what they do is they just go in and they play these phrases. Downside to doing it that way is they can't hear themselves very effectively alongside of the layers that they're adding, because what I'm not doing, which we talked about on Monday, is I didn't go in and take the first layer and edit it, and then have them play the second layer and edit it, and have them play the third layer and edit it, so that every time they play to themselves, they're hearing 100% in time, accurate. This is exactly what it sounds like. Problem with it is when they're trying to match what they do here coming around, they're trying to match a stacking of things that have not yet been edited for timing, tuning, or tone. In reality, tonally we have some tone going on because that's how we might get set it up. But so that's why when you're looking at these, you're seeing, oh man, there's some discrepancies. So this is where Elastic Audio wins. The one thing you couldn't do with Beat Detective is with Beat Detective, when you did your processing, you guys all just did it. You separated the clips, you conformed the clips to the grid, and then what happens at the end? The third step. Yeah, essentially the smoothing, you're crossfading it. Well, the problem with it is if you were to accidentally mess one of those positions up, what you have to do to fix it is you're going to have to manually go in and either manually slide the clip or hit undo, reposition the trigger point, reseparate, reconform, recrossfade, right? It's a huge, elaborate process in terms of timing mechanisms. It works easily with drums because most of the time it's more accurate than Elastic Audio, and a lot of times it's spot on. When we get to passages that look like this, and we start to look at Elastic Audio timing, if you were to say, you know what, for some reason this note position was completely wrong, instead of having to go back and undo all those steps, you could literally live just go grab the trigger and move it. So what we're going to do we're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to get into pretty much mapping out Elastic Audio timing for this entire session. So we're going to be mapping out timing mechanisms to tighten up everything from top to bottom. And you guys already did, on Monday, you guys did the drums in Beat Detective, but we're going to start over again with the drums in Elastic Audio. The Elastic Audio operations for editing timing for drums is a lot faster. So the good news is, hey, this is a faster process. The bad news is there's a lot of other information that needs to be time aligned. But again, it's kind of getting you're used to, okay, how do the tools work in time alignment? So we're going to walk through that step by step. We're going to look at each particular section, each particular phrase, talk about what the tools are, make sure you guys understand what the appropriate choices are for your Elastic Audio plugins and how you're going to map them out. Because here's the thing, timing, tuning, and tone, if everything was recorded in tune and everything has a decent tone, and that's what's kind of crazy about it. If things have a decent tone, as long as they're in time, it's going to sound amazing. It's a really interesting thought. There's some engineers that I've worked with that it's like, dude, you're not really great, but you're very good at making sure that no one screws any of those 3 major components up. And really, in reality, I've seen some recordings where it was like, you know what, there's not a lot in here. There's just drums, bass, guitar, some vocals, and it sounds huge. And why is it? In most cases, it's because it's in tune, it's in time, and it's it has a good tonal balance. So the timing mechanisms are massive. Again, those of you who missed on Monday, I did mention the fact that unfortunately most of your artists are going to be more prone to go, yeah, let's add another layer. Yeah, let's add another layer. Yeah, let's add another layer. And they're not going to go sit back and think about, oh yeah, who's going to edit the layer? You know, that's your job, right? So we're going to want to make sure we know how to do this quickly. So, all right, we're going to take a break. We're going to take at 20. Let's come back at 10:10. We'll be back, and we'll get into this.